Today we are meeting with Marion Burger and Ilan Cohen, the creators behind Emperor, the piece that is presented in the Teatralna, Kawiarnia Teatralna. Hi, Marion. Hi, Ilan. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me.
Our pleasure.
Pleasure.
I wanted to talk about your piece because I find it very moving, and I watched it a couple of times, and I think, you know, it's a long piece, but if people have time, they should come back and rewatch it because it's a, you know, so multi-layered project that I think you can reveal another levels and layers for yourself. But for me, like, the feeling I had watching it, regardless to the, like, if it was the first time or the third time, it's the same for me, like the profound feeling of loneliness. This is something that was very much with me. I think the loneliness of your father, Marion, and also yours as a person who is in relation with him. Can you maybe first, like, do a short introduction about the project and refer to the feeling of loneliness, if it's something that you also felt, like creating the piece and being in relation with your father?
Yeah, the project, to be short, is linked to my story with my father, who had a cerebral stroke a few years ago, well, 15 years ago almost. I wanted to traduce the poetic way I had to look at his aphasia, because he has lost the ability to speak normally. He can understand very well, but he can no longer speak normally. And sometimes he use different words that the one he really want to use. Sometimes he do some weird combination of words. So I was feeling this is very hard to live, but at the same time very poetic and sometimes very funny. And I wanted to show this show the poetic way, my way to connect with him, that was linked much more with our memories and our what we did together. That because behind each word he was trying to tell, that was kind of linked to something we had shared or lived together. When he tried to find the good word, sometimes he was using close words this way. And this so the project is kind of a way to be in his hands and trying to understand him, to going to in his mental space, and to feel the frustration, but also what he can feel in his disability.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I wanted to show it. But then also going to in this mental space was just we were trying just to compare it to a faraway land. Like aphasia could be a faraway land where people can no longer understand you, and things are weird. And so this land is an empty land, a bit, like there is not everything represented, and it's something a bit like, yeah, you can feel a loneliness in it, just because things are always away, and you are trying to go to find something, understand something, understand where you are and where you have to go. And because all the time it's just to show also the way my father just pointing sometimes the space, like a mental space, trying to find the good word, saying it's very close, that's far, no, it's there, just showing kind of a way in his brain to find the good word. So this kind of walk with him, trying to find a way in his words, was the main idea. And it's funny because I didn't thought about so much loneliness when I did this project. When I first thought about the project, I was really like trying to make the link between us. But at the end, it was funny how one day Ilan told me just like,
he did it for one time. Yeah, you can tell what you.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't set out to make we didn't focus on loneliness. We're focusing on connection. And I think in the process of making it, because when you make VR, it's not like making a film where you're working from concrete elements and then you have these elements that you filmed and then you're editing, but there's something very concrete. In VR, you're kind of building from scratch all the time. And so you have these different pieces that are more or less complete. And it takes a very long time for you to finally get to see things to feel organic, to feel like there's a continuity. And so you're just like working on these little kind of zoomed in details until finally this piece is kind of ready and that piece is kind of ready. And one day you get to see them side by side finally. And it's a strange feeling. And I remember the first time we kind of had more or less of a linear journey that was almost working. There were lots of things missing, but you could kind of, at least it wasn't individual levels anymore. It was all kind of coalescing into one big piece. And I remember I got all the way to the scene where we go into his head really, and we start seeing the world inside his mental space. And there was a little bit of music. We just started putting some music on. And I remember feeling this really intense emotion for the first time since we had finished writing the project. And I remember I took off my headset and I was like, it's so lonely. And that really, I realized what we had done. And it wasn't really the intention. That was never a key word in making it. It just, that's what it ended up becoming, because we were trying to espouse the reality, a poetic reality of what he's going through. And the reality is incredibly lonely. You're locked into your own brain and you can't reach out. And when you try, you're not understood. So you end up closing yourself behind your own thoughts and your own memories.
Yeah, the visual side of it also is like very much linked to this feeling for me, like the winter-like scenery, the cold I felt like when I had a headset on. So yeah, for me, but I'm sure that people can sense it differently, can feel it differently. So this is like the magic of VR, and you know, I'm very curious about the reception of the audience when they see the piece. You mentioned the communication aspects and the frustrations. I think the way you used VR here and the way you used interactions here is amazing, because VR makes sense in your piece and interaction makes sense in your piece in terms of making people frustrated because, for example, there is a moment when you have to write something, and if you're right-handed, you have to write it with your left hand, and it's really difficult. And the speech therapist that sits in front of you is waiting quite long before you make it right, and you can't make it right, and you get impatient. I think this the empathy you have to your father is stronger, because you can really not only read about it or hear your stories about it, but really be in his body as well, not only in his head. So maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Just like we were thinking of what the first, because when we thought about VR, it's just Ilan telling me when I first had this idea of the project, I didn't know which medium will be. I was thinking maybe it's an animation movie or something like that, but I didn't know anything about VR. And Ilan told me, yeah, it would be great in VR, just because the subject just go because it's about empathy. It's about a way to embody, trying to be in his hands, trying to be in his head. And it was the perfect medium for that. So we are thinking, yeah, let's do it in this medium, because there is this interaction that can make you feel really with your body. And it's really something different to, and also I think the emotion and the way people just receive the project is also very linked to their body experience and the way they understand something without words, because, you know, like, you feel something with your senses, and it's different.
And I think that the way we worked on this was, once we decided that this would fit the medium really well, then we really tried to understand the medium, and we looked at many VR experiences and really tried to make lists of things that we felt had to happen in VR because it makes such good use of the medium, and things we wanted to avoid. And so we really tried to, as we wrote different versions of the project, we always tried to keep those things in mind. And one thing that we were realizing was it often you could find yourself frustrated by the lack of precision of some of the hand tracking and so on. And we realized, oh, we can use that to our advantage and actually create more empathy by using frustration as a core mechanic. And it was a bit of a bet, but it turns out it worked out quite well, because a lot of people, they intuitively understand it. Sometimes it takes them a while, and which is what we wanted. We don't want it to be immediate. It feels like something's wrong, and then you realize, oh, it's on purpose. Oh, they're playing with the mechanic. And so we're really happy that people are getting that out of the experience, because I think it, like you were saying, it deepens the connection of empathy with the character.
Yeah, and it's so not understanding first why you don't have your left hand and everything. It's just really something that we want, just because also it's a way my father sometimes doesn't feel that he does wrong. He feels he does right sometimes, and that's what's really the precise part, like the precise feeling that you try to do, like, because when you take a card and it's something and it's something else, it's changing, things are changing, you're feeling you're doing the right thing, but it's changing in your hand. And this also about the frustration about not understanding everything, why it changed, why, and that's why doing it 2 times or 3 times, maybe the experience just make you feel more understanding the small things that just vary in the limit of it is the medium, or it is the project, the story, and it's also playing with the limitation also of the medium. And
yeah, the project very much focuses on the disease, like the disability, right? The aphasia, but I think the great part of it are also recordings of your father, like that we hear, because those are the actual recordings, right? Or
At the end.
At the end. Yeah, only in the generic.
The credits, yeah.
Credits, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like if there weren't there, we couldn't be able to get to know your father that much. Like we would only know one side of him, not only the side that you know what he was in the past, but only the disabled part which he's struggling with. So I think this was a great idea. And he recorded himself, like this was his habit.
He was not recording himself, but he was recording our family voices, like his parents, his uncles, aunts, with asking them to tell their stories. So when I figure out was that I wouldn't be able to do it with him, I was feeling this ironic situation of like, he's there, I don't know him so well because it happens I was only 20. And so I didn't have this adult relationship with him. I just had like this teenage feeling with my dad, because I didn't really had this moment with him of conversation as an adult. And I couldn't just ask him, who were you when you were 30? You know, like, what did you do? And I couldn't do that. So I was feeling that I had to do this project also for this reason, to try to find a way to know him better, and also by this way, it was funny to redo this what he had done with his parents that I could have done with him, but in another way. And voices were very important for him. Yeah, so it's fun part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was recording other people, but there aren't that many recordings of his voice, unfortunately. So we did have to write some of those and have an actor play the part. But then at the end, there is the real voices of him and his real speech therapist.
Yeah.
that we kept really for the credit sequence at the very end. And I don't know, that's the part that I always get chills actually is when you finally kind of come out of this interpretation and back to the real, and you have the pictures of his real life. And we kind of wanted to kind of keep that for the end for things to sort of click, but very late. And we didn't want it to give away the reality of things until the very end.
I want to ask you about the sound design and the like spatial sound. I feel this is like perfectly made in the piece, and I must admit that in many VR pieces this is like a missing part. And I remember like when VR started, everybody was talking that the game changer in VR is the sound, and sound guides you through the experience. Sound points you where you should look, go, and what to pay attention to. And I feel that many creators maybe neglected a little, like they forgot about this, the power of sound in VR, and you really like paid a huge attention to it while creating Emperor. Can you maybe tell about this a little, and maybe like maybe you have a favorite VR piece that also pays that much attention to sound like Emperor, and you could maybe like mention it for the audience?
So the first thing that comes to mind for your last question is maybe Notes on Blindness, which is has some similarities with Emperor in different ways. But when I saw that piece, I actually wanted it to be even more sound based. I agree with you. I think sound in VR is almost the most exciting feature. If you're interested in sound, I mean, it's absolutely unique. It's the only medium where you can have, it's not just binaural sound, it's ambisonic. So it's like if you visualize a sphere around your head, inside that sphere, you can place as many virtual speakers as you want, and they will be spatialized. So if you turn your head, you will hear them in those different places. And so the possibilities of mixing become incredibly detailed and precise, and you can really play with things. So we took that and ran with it. I mean, I think that was the most fun making the project, because we had more control over it and it was less stressful, and budget constraints and so on. We could actually execute what we had in mind, and I think we really did. So we're really proud of the sound. We had a great team. Our sound engineer is very used to VR, and then we had two musician friends that we kind of composed the music, but also the sound design together. And we wanted every sound effect to be musical. We didn't want to use too much music. We wanted to really save the music for specific moments, but to have this musical quality to the textures, to everything. And so there's actually a lot of tones hiding inside of sound designs. A lot of the sound effects are made with the cello to keep something very textural. And because we don't have a realistic representation, we could afford to take a step away from realism to make things a little weirder and a little more poetic. And I think a lot of the guiding principle of Emperor in general is it's about memory, because as Marion was explaining, the connective tissue between her and her father, the understanding, comes through these connections of shared memories. And so we really wanted to layer the experience so that you would sort of feel there was this nostalgic memory of things throughout the experience. So one of the things we did is there's a few musical motifs that are actually hiding in the experience many times in different ways. And the idea is we wanted your brain to sort of pick up on them without really picking up on them, so that by the end, when you come to the final song, the song is actually the way we designed it is those little motifs that you've been hearing all throughout, you're hearing a song that has very elaborate cello arrangements that are enriching the song. But what we did is we removed the song, and we wanted your brain to kind of fill in the gaps, because what we removed is everything that you've been sort of primed with, so that it feels like it's like we call it the ghost theme. So it feels like something's missing and you don't really know what it is, because the music is so lush, but it's just arrangements. It's missing the core of the song, but the core of the song you've heard before. And so it kind of elicits this almost like this weird nostalgic feeling of something missing that you thought you knew in a way. And so that was one of the intentions. And it's one of the ways that we were trying to play with sound throughout the experience. But yeah, I mean, it's a very fun medium. You can, when you're falling in the parachute, there's 3 long cello notes, and those are mixed going from the bottom to the top. So it feels like you're also falling with them. Or at the end, when that big cello piece with all the different cellos are playing, if you turn your head around, you really listen, it's almost like you're inside the orchestra, and you can hear that all the lower end is down at the bottom left, the higher end is up here. We grouped all the tracks into different places, and then we played them from different places, so that if you turn around, it's actually spatialized and it feels like you're inside the orchestra. That sort of thing.
There is also some interactive using of the sound with the pointing for teleportation. We use it like as a tool to help people to find a good way to point. But it's complicated. We find with different people it didn't work for everybody, just because sometimes some people just finish the project and say, oh, I didn't hear, we thought about this tool to find, because it's a big crowded layers of different sounds mixed up very loud. And then when you turn your head to the good precise point where you can point, then it's become clear.
It's like a radar, like a sonar, where it's, if you're in the wrong direction, it's noisy, and if you're in the right direction, it becomes clean.
It's just a symbol of your messy way to find the world, messy sounds and mixing sounds, or not being able to find the good thing, the good place. And yeah, some people we talk about that. Did you hear it was helping you normally to find the way? And people say, oh, I didn't hear anything. It's just like
some people are not audio centric.
Yeah.
But also there is certain light, a different lighting when that guides you to the places you can teleport to, right? So
if you point enough,
there's also a visual cue.
If you point enough time, then it becomes as a light change.
We wanted things to be, we wanted all the guidance to be audio first, visual second, and as subtle as possible. We didn't want any colors, we didn't want any pointing arrows. We figured if people are sensitive to our art direction, and there's very little things, then they'll see it, and it turns out it works. Nobody gets stuck, so it was worth it.
I think the only literal part when you are instructed what to do is when you are asked to stand up.
Yes,
exactly.
Yep.
And the rest is very subtle and not direct.
But it's also diegetic. It's part of the idea of this military training, so we could kind of hide it there. Most people get it immediately. There is actually quite a long loop of instructions where he gets more and more angry, but I think most people would stand up right away.
But we were just very worried about people standing up or not before. When we end the project, everybody started telling, but people won't stand up because they don't understand that they have to stand up for beginning.
Nobody believed it.
Nobody believed that it would work. That to begin seated and then standing. See, it's or seated or standing. And for a long time with the studio, everybody was saying, but it's weird. People don't do that.
But it works.
It works.
People follow.
That's
the fun part about VR is we call it the Wild West of multimedia. There's so many things that still need to be tried out and that haven't been thought of. And so every day someone will tell you can't do this, it's impossible. And then you change one